We have gotten a lot of questions this week, and if you have any more questions, please let us know. We'll try to answer as many as we can.
Like we have all the answers, right?
Exactly.
No, we don't have all the answers. And that's what I want to make sure that people know is these are some skills and some things that have worked in our family, that have worked in a lot of other families, but not necessarily, if it doesn't, I always tell people, if it doesn't work for you, throw it down. Right. If it works for you, use it and keep adding to it, just adding to your quiver of skills so you can help with your family if there are ideas that work.
Definitely. Okay, so the first question we are going to talk about is, how do I manage my kids fighting with their siblings?
Okay. So there are a lot of different ways with that as well. One idea we've used with younger children is whenever a child starts fighting, they start arguing and fighting with each other, typically with parents, the parents will say, well, who started it? Who started it? Whose fault is it? And we typically want to go to the fault or the problem because we want to stop that problem. And so Renee and I would often say, what did you do to keep the fight going? Instead of who started this fight, who started the conflict, who started the upset, what did you do to keep the fight going? And for us, it helps the kids, it reminds them who's responsible. I'm responsible for my own behavior, because instead of getting into blaming somebody else, there's always something to blame. And typically as parents, we haven't been there. We don't know who started the fight anyway, and the kids are going to blame somebody else. I think human beings in general, we like to blame someone else. So if the children are young, we worked with the chair issue of setting them on the chair, we'll often pull two chairs together and put the kids knee to knee. Now, if they're hitting or punching each other, you got to back that up a little bit. And so if you put the two chairs together and say, okay, I want you to sit here and I want you to tell me what you did to keep the fight going, or to keep the argument going, or the conflict going, or the upset going, or whatever it is. Yeah. What did you do to keep it going? And when they're ready to do that, they would say, just call mom or holler at dad and holler at mom. Let us know when you're ready, because I can guarantee you both children will not be ever ready at the same time. And one of them will be ready, and there's no sense holding the other one back if one's ready to tell you and the other one's not. So then we'll go up and say, okay, what did you do to keep the fight going? Well, I kept hitting back, or I kept crying, or I kept punching back, or I kept whatever they did to keep it going. And a lot of times the kids will say to you, I didn't do anything. Really? Yeah. But what did you do to keep the fight going? And so when they're ready to say that, or say something that holds them responsible for their behavior, not the fight, not the upset, just for their behavior, then we'll say, okay, can you give your brother a hug? Can you give your sister a hug? Well, typically, if you go to give somebody a hug, the one that's upset is going to do what? So we don't want to hold the one that's taking responsibility back. So I'll do something like this: give her a hug, and they'll give them a nice hug. And I'll say, okay, run off and when Johnny's ready to give you a hug, I'll holler at you and have you come back.
Don't linger, yeah.
So I'll let the second child just sit there and say, let me know when you're ready. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't do anything. It was her fault. Well, let me know when you're ready to tell me what you did to keep the fight going, and then I'll have the other child come back, say, okay, Mary's ready to give you a hug. Yeah. And then give them a quick hug. By then, it's lost a lot of energy, and they'll give each other little grandma type hugs, and I let it pass. That's good enough for me. Yeah. And they'll have some kind of connection, and then typically they'll go off and play. Now, let's say they do it again. They're fighting again. Yeah. Do the same thing. Bring them back and set them down, so they know I'm sincere about saying, okay, this behavior gets to stop. I'm not going to let this keep happening in my house. And so I'm going to stop. The world's going to stop until you can take responsibility for what you've been doing that didn't work. Yeah. Not that's wrong or right. That just didn't work to fight. Yeah. I don't know. Does that make sense a little bit?
I remember being the kid in that scenario, right, Angie and Aubrey? But, and being so mad during that situation. But I do remember that feeling of, taking responsibility and learning that lesson.
And not for the other child's behavior, but for your behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the hope with raising children, that we're helping them take responsibility for their own behavior. And again, as parents, I always want to say, when I go up to kids, I always say, hey, how are you doing at raising your parents? Because we want to have parents take responsibility of their behavior as well. Mm-hmm. But that's an ongoing thing, that where kids are raising parents and parents are raising children.